At this hour, on this day, 59 years ago, there was an eerie storm rolling over our country. Scores of people were removed from the ground where they lay in Sharpeville. A macabre tableau which included trampled hats, discarded bicycles, and orphaned shoes. It was a moment that shaped how we would move forward as a state of emergency was declared. Political parties were banned and the underground resistance to apartheid found its trigger. In these last many years, this tragic event has morphed into something almost remote from that moment, but important still, in the declaration of a day that celebrates human rights. On Madam Speaker, we ask, to South Africans, what do human rights mean? And I have a formidable panel for you today, my cabinet of experts, so to speak. John Jeffries is the Deputy Minister of Justice. Ricky Minuku is the member of the Masithandane End Hate Crimes Collective. And on my jury, Tseke Kasambala, Project Director, Advancing Rights in Southern Africa, Alex Fitzgerald from the South African Human Rights Commission, and Mpendulo Mfeka, who is with Wits SASCO, and he is their branch chairperson. The rules, ladies and gentlemen, are really simple. Keep it straight and to the point, and I now declare this session open. John Jeffries, there are rights and then there are rights. In your mind, which rights have we managed to fully advance in South Africa?
Quite a difficult question, actually. I was going to immediately say equality, the first right, because obviously we came from a statutory unequal society. I think we've gone far with that, but we will never have complete equality until we have addressed the economic disparities. But things like freedom of expression, the right to organize, the right to participate in protests, those kinds of political rights, I think there's been a strong advancement. Socio-economic rights are obviously more difficult given the backlog that we've had to face.
I'm glad and heartened that there's been a frank response, because rights are directly tied to the way we experience them in our society. And if you don't have economic rights, a lot of things fall by the wayside. Ricky, if we measure that moment in 1960 to where we are in South Africa today, the power of the mass democratic movement was key at that time. How do we stack up as a society against that formidable backdrop?
So things have changed a lot. I think that post-94, we saw a decline in civil society engagement. We saw a decline in mass participation in what we have defined as a new democracy. So while we have this new rights that have been given to us post-94, essentially we have a society where people are not engaging in fighting for their rights, are not engaging in demanding their rights. Often people don't understand what their rights are. And that is why in the past few years in South Africa, we've seen an increase of hate crimes. We've seen an increase of the kind of hatred that we thought we had wiped away with a new democracy in 1994. But instead, we've got increasing incidents of this kind of hatred because people haven't embraced and learned how to live with rights. Rights are still in paper.
So I would say, I mean, there's a dissonance there, John Jeffrey, against the backdrop that you described initially about the movement that we have made and the advancements we've made forward, notwithstanding the areas that still lag behind, like real economic freedom. But some have laid the blame squarely on government for creating the exact context that your counterparts just described.
I don't think that's entirely fair. I mean, government created a participatory framework. I think the problem would have been more civil society saying, okay, we've struggled, we've achieved democracy, now let's leave it up to government. But I don't think government didn't restrict civil society. I think it was more people sort of taking a back seat.
Well, exactly, and they take a backseat. I mean, and we'll listen to our panel a little bit later on. The opportunities for engagement have been there, but they've not been listened to. Communities say that they've not been listened to, and so there's been that deep breakdown between accessibility and the real kind of expression of people's rights. Even though they exist in paper, they don't seem to exist in the real experience of civil society.
That's strange, because one of the things government has done over the last 25 years is to set up structures for people to participate in. So, for example, school governing bodies, health structures, ward committees at a municipal level, the integrated development plan having to be taken out to each ward every year. So there are avenues for people to participate in.
So is it people's fault then? When things go wrong in their protests, is it their fault?
No. Sometimes the protests are around who's getting employed in the service delivery, why is that section getting advances are not my section, those kinds of things. And a lot of it could be with the IDPs, for example. It may well be that the way the meetings are structured doesn't make it interesting for community people, that it's too technical, too boring.
Is that true in the work that you do, Ricky?
So, I mean, I would take that and look at the situation of women and how women participate in structures that have been developed. And I would say that participation is not just about having the structure. It's also about having the resources to engage in the structure. So if you have an IDP process, how do you access that space? How do you access the language of the space?
What's standing in the way? What's standing in the way?
Resources stand in the way. The political perspectives of public servants stand in the way. So when you're having a consultation process, which is about, we want to say to you how you should do things, that's very different from a democracy where people are participating and they are driving and they are saying, this is what we feel should be addressed.
So we'll explore further as my jury weighs in on whether the rights that we have on paper are a lie in the everyday experience of people. You're watching Madam Speaker.